The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, I have an apology to make. Yesterday, I uploaded a playthrough of Where Doom Awaits, the 5th Mythos pack in the Dunwich Legacy cycle, which I had to take down later that day. Long story short, I was listening to the latest episode of the Mythos Busters podcast when I realized to my horror that I had badly misplayed the scenario. While I'll be the first to admit mistakes do slip through from time to time while I'm recording, I try to provide the most accurate playthroughs of the scenarios when they are released, and that recording unfortunately fell short of that goal. I'm sorry for that, and I will do my best to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Before moving on, however, I thought it would be useful to take a closer look at the mistake I made, because I'm willing to bet I'm not the only one who might run into trouble with this scenario. The issue arises with two cards, Base of the Hill and the Ascending Path. You need to investigate the base of the hill and the ascending path to pull the diverging paths and altered paths, which in turn contain the clues you need in order to advance the scenario. However, in order to investigate either the base of the hill or the ascending path, you need to use the investigate action on the card. Therein lies the mistake I made. Since I was playing with Ashcan Pete, I assumed that I could use Duke to investigate with an intellect of 4. That was wrong. I should have been investigating with a base intellect of 2. You cannot use the investigate action on Duke at these locations. Now, Duke isn't the only card affected by this scenario in this way. You can't use flashlights, look what I found, Rite of Seeking, Drawn to the Flame, or other ways investigators with low intellect use to offset their deficiency. Obviously, this puts investigators with a low intellect, such as Agnes Baker and Ashcan Pete, in a really bad spot. Not only do they have to find the skill bonuses and or cards to boost their intellect to pass the intellect test at these locations once, but you might have to do it as many as 6 times to get all the diverging path and altered path locations into play that you need to get the clues you need in order to advance. That is a pretty tall order when your base intellect is 2, the shroud value is 3, and you've been relying on Duke to pull you through scenarios up to this point. If you fail enough of those checks, you'll quickly find yourself locked out of the scenario, unable to make any progress. Now, there are some players who are extremely upset about this particular aspect of the scenario because it can lead to a negative play experience, especially in campaign play, and I can totally understand where those players are coming from. Most players tweak their decks over the course of the Dunwich Legacy campaign to mitigate their low intellect. And so if you suddenly discover that the strategy you were using is busted and all those cards are essentially blank, that could be a big problem. The Arkham Horror LCG's deck construction rules exacerbate this problem because it's difficult to make wholesale changes to your deck between scenarios without spending a lot of experience points, which most players don't want to spend using to tweak their deck in that way. They'd rather use those experience points to buy cool new cards for their deck. This is a particularly painful blow in Where Doom Awaits because, as some of you know, have no doubt discovered, the stakes in this scenario are extremely high. Now, I don't really want to get into whether the designers made the right decision with this scenario. I'll save that discussion for after Jenny and Skiz have had their chance to take a crack at this scenario. I just hope that if you're a new player out there or haven't had the chance to play this scenario yet, you'll learn from my mistakes, and you'll be better prepared when you bring Where Doom Awaits to the table. So without further ado, we are going to take another crack at this scenario with Ashcan Pete. I thought it'd be interesting to try it with Ashcan Pete rather than switch to an investigator with a high intellect. This is a tough matchup for Pete with a 2 intellect, but we are going to give it a try, and we will see how it goes. So this could be either the shortest game of Arkham Horror LCG I've played, or it will be the most exhilarating because we're going to pull off a great victory So we are set up here and ready to go. Ashcan Pete starts in play here at the base of the hill, which is a 3-shroud location with 0 clues. And it is connected to each copy of the diverging path, and it has the action Investigate. If you succeed, instead of discovering clues, put a random set-aside diverging path into play and limit once per round. It also has the Resign action. This is more than I signed up for. So what you need to do is you need to pull the diverging paths, get those into play, go to those, grab the clues, and then you can move up the hill towards the ascending path. Once you reach the ascending path, you do the same, pulling the altered path locations, grabbing the clues from those, and then you are able to get to Sentinel Peak, where you will find the boss, Seth Bishop, the big bad who's been pulling the strings during the Dunwich Legacy campaign. He has 5 combat, 3 health per investigator, and 5 agility. He's a humanoid sorcerer elite, and he has Retaliate, but he's a bit of a cream puff. He only hits for 1 health and 1 sanity, and he's worth 1 victory point. Our agenda for this scenario is calling forth the old ones. As you approach Sentinel Hill, you hear ancient Latin rites bellowed across the night. The time for action has come. If you cannot stop the sorcerers in Dunwich, who knows what terrors they might unleash upon the world. And it has a doom threshold of 12. Our opening act is the path to the hill. A vibrant arcane energy fills the air with a bone-rattling chill. The energy swirls along the crushed trail before you and seeps down several other paths before disappearing. And the objective is, when the investigators have collected the requisite number of clues, they must immediately spend them and advance. And we will need 2 clues per investigator. So the number of clues we need is not great, but it will be a challenge to collect those clues, probably because the swirling energy has created some sort of way of throwing Duke off the scent. So Ashcan Pete is going to have to rely on his own intellect to figure out this mystery. We are playing Doom Awaits on standard difficulty. The skull is a -1, -3 instead if you are at an altered location. The cultist is reveal another token, cancel the effects and icons of each skill card committed to this test. That adds a little bit of insult to injury, since that's what Ashcan Pete is going to be relying heavily upon in order to pass those intellect checks to get those diverging paths and altered paths into play. The tablet is a -2, -4 instead if it is Agenda 2, and the Elder Thing token is a -X. Discard the top 2 cards of your deck. X is the total printed cost of those discarded cards. So that could be, depending on how you've constructed your deck, that could be an extremely painful pull. I'm using roughly the same Ashcan Pete deck that I used for the Undimensioned and Unseen playthrough. I did make one change to boost up his Investigate a little. I added 2 copies of newspaper, so hopefully we can see one of those early. He does have a copy of Scrapper in play, as well as Duke, although Duke is not going to be as useful in this scenario. We are ready to draw our opening hand, so we will do that now. So what we're looking for here, we are going to need our Dark Horse early, because that will, as long as we have no resources, that will boost our intellect. A copy of newspaper would also be helpful to boost our intellect, and we're going to be looking for things like our perceptions. We're going to need our Look What I Founds. We can't play them to discover the clues, but we can pitch them for the 2 intellect icons. So we're going to need those as quickly as we can find them, so we can make some progress. So we will draw our opening hand and see how we do. There is a Perception, a Guts, a Lucky. There's the newspaper, and Pete Sylvester. That is a pretty good opening hand. We will pitch the guts and... do we pitch the lucky or not? That's a good question. We're going to save the lucky because we might need that in order to get another location out of the base of the hill. So we will just draw one more card. And that is an Unexpected Courage. That will help as well. So we will shuffle that back up. We are ready to begin with our opening turn. So we will, first of all, spend one resource to put the newspaper into play. That will give us +2 investigate. While we have no clues, so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to try to get the diverging paths in play before we go and grab those clues so we don't lock ourselves out of the bonus from newspaper. And we also want to get Pete Sylvester down for 3. That will boost our willpower and our agility and give us that nice little sanity boost we like. So we are ready to investigate. We will try our once per round investigate check. Ashcan is sitting at a 4 currently. We will pitch the perception in order to boost ourselves up to 6. That will be a 6 versus 4. Let's see how we do. That's a -2. We succeed, so we do indeed get our first diverging path on the table. All right, a good start so far for Ashcan. We will draw a card. There is our weakness, racked by nightmares. We have to exhaust all assets you control. Assets you control do not ready. That really only affects Duke at the moment. And we need to take 2 actions in order to get rid of that. We forgot to draw a card for perception, so we'll do that. There's a Kukri. And we also gain a resource. Okay. And we move on to our first Mythos phase. We add 1 Doom, and we will draw our first encounter card, which is a Crypt Chill. That is bad news. That's going to be a test 4. And we are a 5 with Peter Sylvester in play. We do have a lucky if we need it, so we will go 5 versus 4. -1. We pass. That is very fortunate. It would be very bad news if we had to pitch any of our assets at this time. We are ready to move on to our second turn. I think I'm going to take the double action to get rid of Racked by Nightmares right now, and then we will do another investigate check at 4 versus 3. We will make that, we'll pitch our Unexpected Courage to make that a 6 versus 3. There's a -2, so we are successful. We get another diverging paths into play. So far, so good. And that will end our turn. So we get to ready our assets because we no longer have the Racked by Nightmares. We will draw a card. There's a Guts and gain a resource. And go on to our second Mythos phase, in which we see the Avian Thrall. Now that is bad news. That is bad news. Okay, so how are we going to take that sucker down? That is a big question. It's got 5 combat, 4 health, and 3 agility. And it is a creature, monster, and abomination. Its prey is the lowest intellect, and it's a hunter. And while the Avian Thrall is being attacked using a ranged firearm or spell asset, it gets -3 fight. So, The most that we can muster at the moment is with Duke. The best we can get is 4 versus 5. That is not going to do us much good. Our best hope, I think, at the moment might be to evade it. We do have a kukri in our hand. Of course, that doesn't help us that much either. So let's try to evade this thing. That will be a 4 versus 3. So let's give that a shot. What's the Chaos Bag have to say about this? Alright, the Chaos Bag says we can have it. So we will exhaust the Avian Thrall for the time being. Now, this deck has nothing that can really deal with this creature. So it is going to harass us for the time being. This is going to be tough. 4 versus... we're going to need to draw some overpowers. We do have a Fire Axe, which could help us take this thing down if necessary. But that's going to be pretty difficult until we get some... if we do get our Fire Axe, we do have a better chance. So let's try to get our last diverging path out on the table here. First of all, so we will investigate at 4 versus 3. Unfortunately, we've run out of boosts, so we're just going to have to do that straight up. That's a failure. And one more time. That is the cultist, so that will be reveal another token, which is a -3, and that is a failure. Okay. So we will ready the Avian Thrall. He will engage us. We will draw a card. There is another perception and a resource. Throw another Doom up there and draw an encounter card, which is a Frozen by Fear. So the first time we move, fight, or evade, that will cost us another 2 actions. And we can take a willpower check of 3 in order to get rid of it. So after a promising start, Ashcan has run into some problems here with an enemy that he is really not equipped to deal with, and a Frozen by Fear, which is going to really limit his ability to fight this thing. Nevertheless, we will continue. We do have a Scrapper, which can boost our fight somewhat. So if we exhaust Duke, now do we want to evade it first of all? That might be a better move if we evade it first and then maybe chip away at it over a couple turns. So we will exhaust Duke. Or no, we're not going to do that yet. We are going to try to evade it first. That will be a... He's a 4 versus 3. Let's spend 1 resource from Scrapper to give us a 5 versus 3. So this is going to take up 2 actions. What's the Chaos Bag have to say? There's a -2. So we are successful. We do evade the Avian Thrall. And that took up 2 actions. So now we need to, let's try to hit it. We will exhaust Duke. That will put us at 4. What do we have? We can pitch the Kukri. That'll get us to 5, and we'll pitch 2 resources. 6, 7. Yeah, we'll go 7 versus 5. All right, and that's a -2, so we do 1 damage to the Avian Thrall. At the end of our turn, we test 3 willpower to see if we can get rid of the Frozen in Fear. We are currently a 5 willpower with Peter Sylvester in play. So we'll go 5 versus 3. We'll see how we do. There's an Elder Sign. That will we'll take that. It's a +2 and we ready Duke, so we get rid of the Frozen in Fear. The Avian Thrall will engage us again. We do get a card and some resources. There is my second copy of Peter Sylvester. Throw another Doom up there. And let's see how we do in terms of encounter cards. There is the Beyond the Veil, so that will put us on a pretty hard timer for this game. As you know from previous scenarios, if you run out of cards in your draw deck, you take 10 damage. Currently, I can only take 8, 9 damage, so that will be the end of me if this thing triggers. We've got 23 cards left in our deck. Beyond the Veil does surge, so we get another card. It is the spaces between. It is a hex and a hazard. You flip each non-Sentinel Hill location in play to its unrevealed side, removing all clues from it. Each investigator and enemy at a location flipped in this way immediately moves to the nearest Sentinel Hill location. You shuffle each non-Sentinel Hill location so the players do not know which is which. Well, since we haven't gone to either of those locations yet, we'll just leave them where they are. The results will be the same. Okay, we still have an Avian Thrall to deal with. We can continue to chip away at it. We will try to evade it. Whoops. We will try to evade it again. We are at a 4 versus 3. See how we do here. There's another Elder Sign, so that is a success. The Avian Thrall will be evaded. Now we have a couple chances here to take a whack at it. So we will exhaust Duke. That gets us to 4. We will spend a resource for Scrapper. That gets us to 5. We will spend one more resource. That gets us to 6 versus 5. Actually, we did 2 damage to it. What am I talking about? 1 damage. Duke does 2, so he should actually have 2 damage. So where were we? 4, 5, 6 versus 5? Or do we go 5? Yeah, 6 versus 5 or 5 versus 5. I guess we'll go 6 versus 5. Let's see how we do. +1. Ho ho! Duke, your nose might not be any good at sniffing out the trail, but your bite is pretty vicious. We managed to take down the Avian Thrall. So good stuff there. We will discard that thing. We have 1 action left. We evaded, we killed the Thrall. So let's try to get our final diverging path into play so we can make sure we can get access to those clues. We are going to go 4 versus 3. I am not going to pitch my perception. I'm going to save that for the ascending path if I can. 4 versus 3, we get a -1. So we get our final diverging path into play. Excellent. Okay. Good stuff from Ashcan Pete. We're putting up a fight here. We will draw a card and gain a resource. There's a leather coat. We are up to 5 doom out of our possible 12. We draw an encounter card. It is another spaces between. So again, we shuffle up everything, and so we don't know what is what, but since we already don't know that, we won't bother with that. I am going to drop the leather coat for a little bit of extra protection, and we will move. We're going to use Duke to move to the first diverging path. We will flip it over. It is the Frozen Spring. It is a 3 shroud location with 1 clue per investigator. And after you reveal Frozen Spring, lose the remainder of your actions and immediately end your turn. So that will be the end of our turn. I would assume that's how it works with Duke, even though we're sort of mid-action. It says immediate. It is a forced effect, and we have to immediately end our turn. So we will play it that way. Alrighty, so we will ready Duke. We will draw a card. There is another copy of Guts and gain a resource. Add a doom. And our encounter card this Mythos phase is the Vortex of Time. Each investigator at a Sentinel Hill location tests 4 willpower. Each investigator who fails takes 2 damage. Now, we are not at a Sentinel Hill location, so we can safely ignore that treachery. That is excellent. I will certainly take that any day. We have Duke can investigate 4 versus 3. We do not have anything we can pitch to improve that, so we will just go 4 versus 3. There is the Cultist, and that's another pull, which is a -2. So that'll put us at a 2 versus 3, so we will spend a resource and our lucky in order to gain that clue. And we will draw a card for the lucky. There's an overpower. That was our first action. Second action, we will move up to the base of the hill, and our third action we will move to the diverging path, the second one, and it is the Slaughtered Woods. It is a 2 shroud location with 1 clue per investigator. After you reveal Slaughtered Woods, take 2 horror if you have no actions remaining. We have no actions remaining, and Peter will be more than happy to take the horror for me. Since we do, he will heal 1 at the end of my turn. And that is the end of my turn. So we will draw a card. There is a Ward of Protection. Alright. Gain a resource. We are up to 7 doom. And we get a Thrall, which will spawns at the location with the most clues, so he will engage us. So we will need to kill that thing before we can continue. Alright, so first of all we need to deal with this Thrall. Duke, we can go 4 versus 2. I'm going to pitch, well, do we want to pitch the overpower or save it? I think we're going to save it. We'll just go 4 versus 2. That is a -3, so that is going to be a failure. Unfortunately, the Thrall does have Retaliate, so we are going to take 1 damage and 1 horror. So we will take the damage, and Peter will take the horror. And we will pitch, let's pitch our other copy of Peter to ready Duke and try that again. That is a 4 versus 2. That is a -2, so we do succeed and the thrall will die. Unfortunately, we cannot ready Duke again this turn. So the best we can do is a 2 versus 2 investigate check at the Slaughtered Woods. I don't really want to draw any more cards than I have to due to that Beyond the Veil, so let's just do a 2 versus 2 and see how we do. Oh, look at that! Sometimes it pays off to take a chance like that. We get an Elder Sign, which is a +2, and we get to ready Duke, and we do grab that clue, so there we go. And since we do have the requisite number of clues, we have to spend 2 of them in order to advance to Act 1B, which is a sacrifice made. During your search through the wooded paths around the base of Sentinel Hill, you come across a startling sight. A herd of sheep lays dead upon the ground in a secluded clearing, their bloodied carcasses placed in a strange but careful pattern. Holding your nose against the stench of death, you step over mangled sheep on your way to the center of the odd formation. In the center of the sheep lies the corpse of a man. A clear jewel has been firmly pressed into his forehead, caving in the front of his skull. His eyes are wide, his face contorted in a vision of fear, as if beseeching you for mercy. Though you know better, you check for a pulse. As you touch the man's skin, the jewel in his forehead dissolves, and the woods around you seem to clear. The arcane presence masking the path further up the hill has faded, so we can reveal the ascending path and remove all clues from each location in play. So we get to flip over the ascending path. It is a 3-shroud location with 0 clues, and you can investigate as with the base of the hill. And if you succeed, instead of discovering clues, you put a random set-aside altered path into play. Very well. We go to Act 2A. There are 3 Act 2As, depending on how you did in the previous scenarios. And in this case, it is Ascending the Hill version 3. As you ascend the hill, the environment around you grows increasingly strange and otherworldly. The arcane energy feels even stronger here, crackling in the air and crawling on your skin. Clues cannot be placed on non-altered locations, and the objective is when an investigator enters Sentinel Peak, advance. And in order to enter Sentinel Peak, we need to spend 2 clues per investigator. So that was at the end of our turn. So we will draw a card. There is another Overpower. Gain a resource. Add a Doom. We're up to 8. And draw an encounter card, which is a Rotting Remains. We get to remove 1 horror from Peter, because at the end of our turn. So we are a 5 versus 3. I'm going to pitch one of my guts to that, so we have 7 versus 3, and we get a +1, so I will simply draw a card, which is another Ward of Protection. So we do have some protection against nasty treacheries if we need them. Alright, so Ashcan can move up to the base of the hill and over to the ascending path. And we have no clues left, so our newspaper is turned back on. We are at a 4 versus 3. We will pitch the Perception to make that a 6 versus 3. And that's a -1, so we get our first altered path into play. right. That will do it for that turn. We will draw a card. There is a look what I found, which we could pitch for the icons. We will add a resource, and we will add a doom. We are at 9 out of 12. And our encounter card this turn is a Beyond the Veil, which will simply surge into a Crypt Chill. We have to remove this doom from Peter Sylvester. Now, I think we will cancel that. We do have the Ward of Protection. We will simply cancel that and put it in. And Peter will take the horror for that. Back to Ashcan. We need to get 2 more of these, or at least 1 more altered path that has clues on it. We don't know which is which yet. So we are at... Did we draw a card for that? Did we play a perception there and I forgot to draw a card? Let me just check that. Yes, we did. So we need to draw a card for the perception we played last time. There is our amnesia. Let's discard all but 1 card in our hand. That is going to hurt a lot. So we will lose our overpowers, our word of protection, our overpower, and we'll keep the lost. Look what I found. We will go 4 versus 3 again. We will pitch the look what I found to go 6 versus 3, and that is a success as well. So we will put that altered path into play. As our second action, we will use Duke to... Well, do we do that? That's a good question. Because if we lock ourselves out and we come up a clue short, we could be in deep trouble. So I am going to actually, as I hate to do it, but I'm going to draw a card as our second action here. There's our Dark Horse. I'm going to play that as our third action. So that will further boost our investigate. Okay. That was our turn. We will draw a card. There's our Fire Axe. Do I gain a resource or not? If I don't gain a resource, we can investigate with a 4-5 versus 3 next turn and hopefully grab that last altered path, get it into play so we can advance. Peter shouldn't have this doom. I'm not... Well, we could always play the Fire Axe as well if we want. And we can always use Scrapper to burn a resource if we need to. So we will take a resource. We are at 10 doom. And our card is... There is a Wright's Howl. Discard the top 3 cards of each investigator's deck. Each investigator at an altered location shuffles each weakness in his or her discard pile back into her deck. We are not at an altered location, so we simply lose 3 cards. There's a Vicious Blow, another Vicious Blow, and a Kukri. All right, we are at a 5 versus 3 thanks to Dark Horse. Or no, we need to burn a resource first, so we will play our Fire Axe. Now we are at a 5 versus 3. So let's see how we do. That's a failure. We will try one more time. and that is also a failure. So we are delayed a turn here at the ascending path. Very well, we will draw a card. There's a manual dexterity. That's not much help. I'm not going to gain a resource. And we will add a doom. Draw our encounter card, which is another Rotting Remains. We are at a 5 versus 3. We will just do that straight up. There is an Elder Sign. That's a +2, so we pass that with flying colors. We are at 5 versus 3 for our investigate test. Let's see how we do. It's an auto fail. Second one, there's a -5. That's a big failure. And the third one is a -4. So we fail 3 times in a row. Wow. That is pretty unlucky. We will draw a card and add a doom. So that will advance us to Agenda 1B. The world is altered. As you explore the paths surrounding Sentinel Hill, the chanting at the hilltop rises to a crescendo and takes an otherworldly quality, reverberating through the trees as if carried by unseen currents. The world begins to change. The grass and trees dissolve like sugar in a cup of tea. A vast, endless sky slices through the reality you see before you, and you feel drawn to it, terrified and awestruck. The arcane power becomes distorted and seeps around you, creating strange alterations in the land. Shuffle the encounter discard pile into the encounter deck. We will do that now. And we have a few over here as well. So this does have a fairly large encounter deck, which does make it, I think, makes this scenario a little easier because a lot of the big bad creatures you have to face are diluted. That will take us to Agenda 2A, which has some nice flavor text written in the scrawl of the cultists. It is beckoning for power. It is a 10. It has a doom threshold of 10, so we have 10 turns in order to finish off this game. We need to draw an encounter card first of all. There is another one of those. Just writes Howl. Discard the top 3 cards of each investigator's deck. Each investigator at an altered location shuffles each weakness. We are not at an altered location, so we are down to 5 cards. So things are getting pretty serious here. I'm not sure Ashcan is going to be able to pull this out. We're running short of time here. Losing that whole turn to 3 failures was pretty painful. So, but we do have a chance. So let us first of all do 5 versus 3. That's a failure. 5 versus 3. That is going to really hurt. Discard top 2 cards. That's a -X. That is 0 and 3, so that's a -3. We only have 3 cards left in our deck, and we are still in no. We've got a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Wow. So we might actually be able to survive if Beyond the Veil goes off. Wow. Well, that'll be that will leave us with 1. No, we won't be able to survive because we have taken 1 damage, unfortunately. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 5 is 10. Yep, so we will be dead in 3 turns, which I do not think we will be able to do. So as our final, we will attempt to investigate again, 5 versus 3. There we finally get it. We get our final altered path on the table. We lost a lot of time there, unfortunately. So we will go to, we will draw a card. There's another leather coat. Unfortunately, we cannot wear 2 leather coats at the same time. Would be great if we could double up on those. Unfortunately, we cannot. We will not gain a resource. We will add a doom, and we will add draw an encounter card, which is another one of the spaces between. That's the one where you pick up all the altered paths and shuffle them up. Since we haven't been to any of them yet, we won't worry about that. We will exhaust Duke and move and investigate this altered path here. It is a tear in the path. It is a 3-shroud location with 1 clue per investigator. And after you reveal a tear in the path, take 2 damage if you have no actions remaining. We do have actions remaining, so we are okay there. However, it is a 3 versus 4 for Duke. But we do have no clues, so we do get another +2 on top of that. So it is a 6 versus 3, and we are successful. Okay, so that was our first action. Second action, we'll move back to the ascending path. Third action, we'll move here. Let's see, did we actually need all 3 altered paths? No, we did not. So we did lose some time there. Uprooted Woods is a 2-shroud location. And with 1 clue after you reveal Uprooted Woods, discard the top 5 cards of your deck if you have no actions remaining. I have no actions remaining, and so that will be the end of my game, as I take the 10 damage from Beyond the Veil. Well, that was unfortunate. We did lose quite a bit of time due to the trying to make sure we got all 3 ascending paths out so we could maximize the value from our newspaper. Let's see what this other ascending path was. It was also a location with a clue, so we would have been okay had we gone with just the 2. Unfortunately, we also lost quite a few cards thanks to the Wright's Howled. We drew 2 of those, so we lost 6 cards from that. So that's basically 6 turns right there. You lose 6 turns to cards. So we lost 6 turns to that card. So that was unfortunate as well. So we did manage to work around not being able to use Duke in this scenario thanks to the newspaper. Unfortunately, we just were a little bit too slow. I have played this with other investigators and have beaten it, so if you can get past this initial phase of investigating the diverging paths and altered paths, the ending is pretty straightforward. As I mentioned, Seth Bishop doesn't hit very hard, and he doesn't have a whole lot of life, so he goes down pretty quickly. Unfortunately, this one is going to be chalked up as a loss for Ashcan Pete, and fortunately this was just a standalone game, so it doesn't have any repercussions for the campaign, which are pretty extreme. So overall, I still like this scenario. I'd probably use it for testing in the future, although it does have a fairly large encounter deck, which makes it, I think, a little more inconsistent than some of the other scenarios in the Dunwich Legacy campaign, because it's much more diluted, so things that you would normally see don't come out quite as often. Of course, there are some cards let's see, we had the Avian Thrall coming up in 2 cards. That I was not looking forward to fighting that guy again. And we had an Ancient Evils. One of the big cards you want to try to avoid in this is the where was he? He was way down at the bottom. The Crazed Shoggoth. He spawns at the nearest altered location, and if he attacks and defeats an investigator, that investigator is killed outright, thus ending that investigator's campaign. And it has a whopping 6 health, so it is a tough SOB to take down. Fortunately, it's only got 3 combats, so you can peck away at him, but if he catches you at the wrong moment, that could be the end of your campaign. So that is going to do it for me today. If you enjoyed this playthrough, I'd appreciate it if you would leave me a thumbs up. It helps out the channel immensely. Remember to hit that subscribe button to be notified of future content. Do you enjoy this scenario where Doom awaits? Do you agree with how the designers put this one together? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd be really interested in hearing your perspectives. If you'd like to get a hold of me, I can be reached on email at manfromleng@gmail.com. I am also on Twitter at manfromleng. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.